should express my gratitude to the organizers of this group and all the members for having invited me to share my thoughts so that I can bring over my stress due to this corona. Okay. When I spoke to Mr. Shiva Shanmugam, he told me that I should speak on only 2-3 specific topics in IPC. So now, when you introduced me, you said that I should touch upon the substantive law, namely IPC, Evidence Act, and the other procedural law, namely CRPC. It will be humanly impossible. If you want me to concentrate on the topic which I already assumed to cover, I will do that. Or if you want to be very general and to say about the latest developments in criminal law, I can also do that. I would invite you to offer your views on that.
Sir, you can go ahead with your own plan of action, sir. Specific provisions which you have already decided upon, we are ready to hear, sir.
No, I got everything in my hands. No problem at all. But the only problem is that I do not have books. I do not even have the barracks. Whatever is there in my mind, I am just putting down some notes from out of that.
No, we have intended this session for the specific provisions which you want to speak, sir. I only touched upon since it concerns the criminal procedure.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Let me now go into the topic. See, I assured Mr. Shiva Shanmugam that I would cover these areas, namely the common object which is dealt with in section 149 and the common intention dealt with in section 109 and also 120B, conspiracy. These three are more or less interlinked, but very often confused. Though we have crossed more than 150 years of experience with this IPC and all the other provisions, which I just now quoted, the confusion still persists in the minds of many legal brains, including the honorable judges at various levels. Therefore, I thought of taking this opportunity to deal with these topics. I don't claim that, in my view, I'll be right in my own interpretation. I only say that these are all my views on these subjects. My view may not be appealable to many of you, and it may not be acceptable to some of you also. But anyway, I want to say as to what are my views. Now, first of all, two expressions, common intention and common object. These things are very often confusing as number one. Number two, in section 34, while dealing with common intention, the lawmakers have also introduced yet another phrase, that is, in furtherance of the common intention. In furtherance of the common intention. Whereas, in section 149, if you look at, the language used is in prosecution of the common object. So what is the difference between this in prosecution of the common object and in furtherance of the common intention? This is very important for us to know by making the proper distinction between these two provisions. And similarly, if you look at section 120B, definition clause 120A, it speaks of an illegal act done out of conspiracy. So I will deal all these three subjects. So to tell the history, when the IPC was originally enacted in section 34, this expression in furtherance of the common intention of all was not there thought. This was introduced by means of an amendment in the year 1870, nearly after 10 years. This provision was introduced only by means of, this was probably the first amendment made to the CRPC. Now, what do we mean by this? I'll give one small illustration that will clear all your ideas about this. Let us say a crime is committed by two people. Let it be a case of murder. Two people go, two people cause injuries, multiple injuries, and the man dies. No doubt, both are liable for punishment under section 302 IPC. But out of the two, one man goes and stands outside the house The other man only causes the death. How to rope in the second man vicariously? That is helped by section 34. Section 34, similarly, section 149 also. Both speak of vicarious liability. Though the concept of vicarious liability is known to civil law, in criminal law, similar liability is made by these two provisions. Section 34 speaks of a criminal act. First of all, please underline every word of that section is important. Let me read section 34 as well as section 149. Then I will explain as to how they differ. Please let us come to section 34. I will read. I think you all have got the book.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Please kindly open section 34. You would have read it 100 times, but it is essential for us to read it again now when we are dealing with the subject. See, let me read section 34. Please kindly see. An act done by several persons in furtherance of common intention. When a criminal act, please underline the word criminal act, is done by several persons in furtherance of the common intention of all. In furtherance of the common intention of all, each of such person is liable for that act in the same manner as if it were done by him alone. So what is a criminal act? The criminal act should be an offense. In an occurrence, there may be several acts done by several persons. All acts put together make out a larger single act. That larger single act would make out an offense. For that offense, everyone is liable. That is what section 34 says. If you look at section 33, you will find some more clarity. The word act denotes as well as series of acts as a single act. The word omission denotes as well as a series of omissions as a single omission, which means in the same transaction, or to put it very simply, in the same occurrence, several acts would have been committed. One would have cut the deceased on his leg, the other would have cut him on the, he would have cut him cold, like that. Each one would have committed one act or one or more acts. All such acts put together make out a one single act. What is that one single major act? It is the act of causing death. It is the act of causing death. For the act of causing death, which is an offense, which is a manslaughter, not only the person who caused the death is liable, the other person who was also there at the place of occurrence, sharing the common intention, is also liable for the same punishment. If two persons go, one person commits murder, the other person is just helping him, the second person is also liable for punishment by invoking section 34 of the Act. This is what section 34 says. What are the essential requirements of section 34 which are to be proved or which are to be disproved by the accused or improbably by the accused? Please kindly see the, I am not going to burden you by reading by many judgments. First of all, I would request you to read the provision and understand the first principle behind each provision. Your mind will surely give a solution to the issue before you. In order to ensure whether your understanding of the provision is right or wrong, then you can go for the judgments. So judgments are only clarificatory. Therefore, I would say that please kindly look into the provision, read every word, that is what I want to do now. See, when a criminal act is done, what is to be done? An act should have been done. That is a larger act. That act should be a criminal act. That criminal act should be an offense so that the person who committed that act can be punished. And secondly, done by several persons. By several persons, that means more than one person. If they commit the larger act, in furtherance of the common intention. So it is also to be proved that the accused had common intention. What is common intention? See, I'll give you a small example. I have an intention to commit a particular crime. There is a common enemy. I want to do away with him. And there is yet another person. He also has got enmity. He also wants to do away with him. Now, I have got intention to kill. The other man has also got the same intention, similar intention to cause the death. But so long as it remains to be only an intention, neither me nor he can be punished. When we meet together, I tell him that I got this intention to do away with this man. And the other man also says, yes, I do have the same intention. He should not be living. We should do away with him. We should finish him off. He also says, now my intention is shared with him, and his intention, which is also the same, is shared with me. Now, what was all along a similar intention in my mind and him has become a common intention now. So this is common intention. There is something now common. I got intention. He has got the same, similar intention, same intention. That same intention or similar intention becomes a common intention when we share it. Until we share the intention, then it doesn't become a common intention. How can intention be shared? Intention can be shared only by means of pre-meeting of minds. Pre-meeting of minds. Does it mean it may also be argued that when a person in Chennai can have common intention shared, that is intention shared so as to make it a common with a person in Madurai? Yes, it is possible. It does not speak of physically meeting of persons. It speaks of meeting of two minds. Meeting of two minds. When two minds meet, what is there in one mind as an intention is shared with the other mind, which is also a mind. So there is sharing of intention between two human minds. This is essential. Let us not have the impression that in order to make an intention common, there has to be pre-meeting of persons physically. Section says pre-meeting of minds. That is what the interpretation given in various judgments. Pre-meeting of minds, pre-concert. This is essential. Now, this kind of pre-meeting of minds can be heard either directly by meeting or over phone or by letter or by means of any other communication through anybody else. So what is essential is my intention should be known to him and his intention should be known to me, and both of us should agree on that intention. Then only the intention becomes common. This is the second part of section 34. Then let us move on further. Then several persons in furtherance of the common intention of all. So something should be done. That is, a criminal act should have been done in furtherance of the common intention. In furtherance of means in activated, driven by that common intention. Both should have done something. Both should have done something. And all such acts done by me and done by him put together should make out a larger single act. That act is the murder in this case. It may be culpable homicide even. So the person who committed the murder will be liable for punishment under section 302 IPC, and the person who aided him, who assisted him, or who was present there physically sharing the common intention, doing something, he is liable for punishment under section 302 reduced section 34 IPC. It is no defense for the second accused to say that I did not do anything, I was just watching. So it is no defense at all to say if his presence there was out of common intention and he had actively participated in the commission of the crime, then only he is liable under section 34. Please understand that in criminal law, having a mere intention is no offense at all. having a mere intention is no offense at all. When the intention is put into action, then it becomes an offense. Until then, mere intention makes of no offense. Intention is one of the ingredients of the offense that is later on committed. So in the case of section 34, so long as the common intention remains unexecuted, no offense is committed. When both of us go and do something, I do something and he does something, and it results in the consequence, it results in a consequential offense, then for that both are liable equally. That is the constructive liability under section 34 of the IPC. A question may arise whether the presence of both the people must be there. Yes, the active participation of both the accused is a sine qua non to make out an offense under section 34. In the absence of one accused, when the other accused goes and commits a crime, though it may be in pursuance of the common intention, the other person, namely the person who did not go there, cannot be convicted under section 34. Therefore, what is essential is the physical presence of the accused on the spot, number one. Number two, he should have also done something in furtherance of the common intention. He cannot be a mere silent spectator. At the same time, whether his act of silence would amount to an act or not is also a question of fact. Suppose two people go in order to commit theft. One person is standing outside the house. The other one enters into the house and commits suicide. The man who is standing outside is just watching the movement of anybody and to give a caution to or warning to the person who has gone in. This act is also in furtherance of the common intention. The intention is to commit theft. This is part of that. So therefore, it is no difference for him to say that I did not even enter into the house. Though he was waiting outside, he actually participated and he did something to facilitate the other man to complete the crime. He is also liable by invoking section 34. To this extent, you may not have any difficulty at all in understanding. When we look at section 149, you will surely have some confusion. Now let us go to, I got some judgments which I will later on cite. Then I will explain as to what it says. Now let us move on to section 149. Now I am only giving a superficial view of these two provisions. Then we will go something deep into that a little later. Now please come to section 147 or 149. We will go straight to 149. Please come. I think that all of you have got. Please, in the other groups, we used to screen that also, provision. I do not know whether Mr. Shivashanmukam could do that. No problem, no problem. So I will read 149. Please, all of you, please kindly read. If an offense is committed by any member of an unlawful assembly in prosecution of the common object of that assembly, or such as the members of that assembly knew to be likely to be committed in prosecution of that object, every person who at the time of the committing of that offense is a member of the same assembly is guilty of that offense. He is guilty of that offense. So I do not want to read it again. You would have understood as to what does it convey. Section 149 requires fundamentally an unlawful assembly. What is an unlawful assembly? That is defined in section 141. Unlawful assembly means 5 or more persons joining together. So if the assembly, here also we are many people joining together, would it amount to an unlawful assembly? No. An assembly which is otherwise lawful becomes unlawful when the assembly has got an object which is unlawful. So until then, it is only a lawful assembly. So what makes the difference between a lawful assembly and unlawful assembly is the object. If the assembly has been convened to do some lawful act, like a meeting, ordinary meeting, some exchange of thoughts, etc. It is a lawful meeting. If the assembly decides and if the assembly conceives an object to commit a crime, then it is the assembly becomes unlawful. Then the assembly becomes unlawful. So for 149, you please kindly see, if an offense is committed by any member of an assembly, so there we saw that everyone should have participated in the commission of the crime. There, what is intended? To commit murder. In the murder, everyone should have played a role. But here the marked difference is, the offense is committed by any member of an assembly. It is not necessary that everyone should commit that offense. Even if a single person commits a crime in prosecution of the common object, in prosecution of the common object means to achieve the common object, then every one member is liable for prosecution. See, let me give one small illustration. There are 5 people who assemble at a particular place. There is a boundary dispute between one of the persons and his enemy. The adjacent landowner, who is his enemy, is not available in the village. He now comes to know that he is absent, therefore he can very easily go and remove the fence and keep it at a distance. For that purpose, and also to cut the tree and remove it, which is all along in the fence. Now, these 5 people go there. Whether the assembly at the initial stage is unlawful or not. Yes, it is unlawful because they go with an intention to trespass, to cause mischief, and also to commit theft by cutting and removing the tree. This is the object. This object is unlawful. This object is very much unlawful. Now, all the 5 people go to the field. They knew very well, they have already verified that the owner of the adjacent land is not available. So, therefore, when all the 5 people go, already they have formed into an assembly which is unlawful because the object of the assembly is to go and cause mischief, on to commit theft, etc., which are all offenses. So the assembly is unlawful, no doubt about that. Now these assembly of 5 people go there, and when they are there, they start removing the fence. They start doing mischief. They start cutting the tree. When this was going on, suddenly the owner of that adjacent land had come there. Suddenly that man had come. See, one of the persons, he comes and prevents these people from doing their unlawful act. At that time, the deceased suddenly intervenes and he tries to prevent them from committing mischief, committing theft, and all the other offenses. So one of the persons out of the 5, one person gives a single blow on the head of the deceased. Only one. It was only one person gives a single blow on the head of the deceased. Now the deceased, that man, the owner of the land, sustains injury. He is taken to the hospital. Later, he dies out of the injuries. Now you see the danger of section 149. For the offense committed by one single person, that is killing, all the others will also be held responsible by invoking section 149. This is a very, very dangerous section. For the act committed by one person, that is for the offense committed by one single person, everyone else is also held liable. This is the danger of this provision. But what are all the essential ingredients? Many of us do not look into this, and so whenever there are more than 5 people, we say that yes, all the 5 are liable to be punished. It is not so. First of all, in the illustration which I have given, there was an assembly which you cannot dispute because it is spoken by many witnesses, which you are not able. The assembly had the intention to go and cause mischief, to cause some damage to the property, which is an offense. That also, let us assume that you are not able to shake. That is also believed by the court. And thereafter, what happens? The one person alone attacks, and he only causes the death. For that, whether the others can be held responsible for not, the only one thing that you have to see is that this was not the object of the assembly, number one. The object of the assembly was only to cause mischief or theft, whatever it may be. It was never the object of the assembly to cause the death. It was never the object of the assembly to cause the death. Now, if we say so, could he escape? No, because the set of section 149 is also to be looked into. It says, or such as the members of that assembly knew to be likely to be committed in prosecution of that object. Here only we have to concentrate. It is no difference to say that the object of the assembly was never to kill. The object of the assembly was never to attack this man. We never intended so. But it is no defense. It is no defense at all. The prosecution may say whether you had a knowledge that this is likely to happen. In this part, we have to concentrate always. Though the object of the assembly is one thing, and the resultant offense may be different, even then, all the people will be held liable by invoking section 149, provided the prosecution is able to prove that the resultant act, the resultant offense was within the knowledge of the other people, that it was likely to have happened. This likely to have happened. Now you please kindly see in this. Here we have to concentrate and we have to succeed. In the illustration which I gave, can it be said that all the 5 people would have had knowledge, would have got reason to believe that the deceased, the owner of the land, would come? No, because they have already verified that he won't come. They have already verified that he is not in town. Therefore, they would not have anticipated his arrival at all at the place of occurrence, so as to say that they had knowledge. Number one. Number two, moving on further, can such a knowledge be attributed to these people that one man in the crowd would cause injury and kill him? This knowledge can be attributed to the rest of the people. It will be too difficult to attribute such kind of knowledge to the others, because they went there innocently, but with the dishonest object of causing only mischief to the property. They would have never anticipated the arrival of the deceased. They would have never anticipated that one of the persons in the assembly would cause such injury. Therefore, it cannot be proved, or it cannot be said against the rest of the people that they knew to be likely to happen. It shall be our argument to say that we never had any knowledge that this is likely to happen. What likely to happen? We never believed that he will come suddenly, because we had already verified that he was not in town. He had suddenly come. And we never expected, or rather never knew, that one man was having some kind of knife in his hand with which he would do that. I did not even have knowledge. So if you come under this part of section 149 and satisfy absence of knowledge, then you can succeed. Now, absence of knowledge means absence of knowledge that likelihood of this offense. Likelihood of this offense being committed by one of the members of the assembly. There are two things here. If the object itself is to commit that crime, then we can't escape. All will be held liable and by invoking section 149. Instead of that, if the object is one thing and the resulted crime is something else, then we have to see whether the accused would have heard reasons to believe that this is likely result. When the two in prosecution, I'm sorry, in prosecution of the common object. See, in the same illustration, suppose when these people were all doing mischief, one person had yet another enemy in the village. He had nothing to do with this occurrence. He was seen elsewhere. One person rushes towards him, causes injury to him, and the man dies. Can we say that all the others are also responsible by invoking section 149? Certainly not. Why? It was never the object of killing that person. The object of the assembly was not to kill that person at all. Please understand this. The object of the assembly was only to cause mischief, to damage the properties. The object of the assembly was never to kill that person. So it was outside the purview of the first part of 149. Second part, can we attribute knowledge that this will happen? No, this knowledge cannot be attributed. Apart from that, the causing of injury, causing of death of that person by one of the members of the unlawful assembly was not in prosecution of the common object. In prosecution of the common object means anything done to achieve the common object. Here, in the illustration which I was just now given, the person was only a bystander who had nothing to do with this mischief. He never prevented. Killing that person or attacking him will not have any connection with the object to be achieved here. He did not come and prevent. He did not say anything. Then why should he be killed? Some other person, he had an intention, independent intention, which is outside the purview of the common object, which is outside the purview of the common object of the assembly. Now he goes and causes the injury. Therefore, in such an event, all the other people cannot be held liable by invoking section 149, though they can be punished for unlawful assembly under section 143. Constructive liability under section 149, again, these people will not come. Now, this is the superficial understanding of section 34 and 149. Now, let us go something deeper into these two provisions simultaneously. Okay. Now, in section 34, we said there was intention. Here we say there is object. Okay. The major difference between these two is there the intention or the intended act should have been committed. If anything is done outside the purview of the intention, the accused cannot be held liable under section 34. So in furtherance of the common intention means what was the intended action, intended act that should have been committed. Outside the purview of that, if any act has been committed, then the other man is not responsible. The person who caused the act or committed the offense alone is responsible. Whereas in 149, the object of the assembly may be one thing, but the offense committed may be totally different. Here lies the difference. I want to repeat, in section 34, the intended action, the intended act should have been committed to invoke section 34. But so far as section 149 is concerned, it is not necessary that the object of the assembly should have been achieved. The offense committed may be different. It may not be the object of the assembly at all, but still, if that offense is committed with a view to achieve the common object, then all the members are liable by invoking section 149. But it is generally believed that when there are 5 people, it is 149. If there are less than 5 people, it is only 34 IPC. That is how the courts do charge sheet the accused. But it is not correct. Section 34 does not limit the number of accused less than 5. It says 2 or more persons. It may be 5 persons, maybe 6, maybe 7, any number. So section 34 does not put a cap or restrict the number of persons who should share the common intention. Any number of persons may have pre-meeting of mind and they may share the common intention. In furtherance of the same, they may commit the crime. But so far as 140, similarly, in 145 also, the minimum requirement is 5 people, but any number of people may be there. But what happens in practice, you can see in any court for that matter, even the judgment of the High Court as well as Supreme Court, when there are less than 5 people, already it is 34. If there are 5 or more, it is 149. Because the difference between these two provisions is not understood properly. That's the reason why this confusion comes. Even when there are 10 people, there is common intention hatched, and all the people who are members of the who have got the common intention do something, then everyone is liable. This misunderstanding that if there are more than 5 people, there can be a charge under section 149 should be first of all removed from our mind. As I already told you, it is not the number of persons, 2 or more, any number of persons. Minimum requirement for 34 is 2, minimum requirement for 149 is 5. That is all. There is no upper cap limiting the number of persons. The difference is as to whether there was common intention or common object. So the nice distinction between common object or common intention is a matter to be enjoyed out of your experience. Even if I repeat the definition or if I make attempt to explain to you as to what is common intention, what is common object, any number of times, it may confuse you because I know that many of you are not practicing on the criminal side. I would only say that you have to read repeatedly to know and enjoy the difference between, say, the common intention and the common object. To give a superficial view about the difference, I can only say intention for the purpose of 34, the intended act should be committed. If the intended act, 5 people join, they want to go and kill a person, they decide. There is a sharing of common intention. All the 5 people go there, and one person cuts and the other people also do something towards that end. Only 5 can be convicted, and by invoking section 34 IPC. By invoking section 34 IPC, because these people had common intention, went to the place of occurrence carrying the common intention, executed the common intention, the intended action was done. Intended act resulted. Therefore, irrespective of the fact whether there are any number of people, that is, the offense would still fall under section 34. But you would not have seen in your experience, in any case, either the High Court or Supreme Court, except in few cases, except I can say not any case, except in few cases, the courts have convicted the accused by invoking section 34 when there are 5 or more accused. This fallacious understanding of section 34 should go from our mind first. Secondly, coming to section 149, simply because there are 5 people, we say, oh yes, all right, all are liable for punishment. That is also a wrong understanding of section 149 to prove, because for the offense committed by one person, many more people are also going to be convicted constructively. One person committed murder, but everyone in the assembly is also going to be punished for the same offense of murder. Constructively, they are all held liable. So we have to be very, very careful before convicting a person by invoking section 149, because for no offense committed by him, we are going to convict him constructively. It is nothing but by means of a fiction. It is nothing but offense is committed by one person. Offense is committed by one person. The other person is of the other persons, 4, 5, 6, 7, any number of persons are also convicted. When we are venturing to do this, we have to be, the judiciary has to be very, very careful, not in a casual manner. Simply because there are 4 or 5 people, we can proceed to convict the accused. So for that, a meticulous examination of the evidence to see whether these ingredients of section 149 are made out. That is the job of the defense counsel. That is the meticulous job of a defense counsel. It's a duty, in fact. You have to tell the court whether these ingredients of section 149 are made out. The major ingredient is whether there was an assembly, number one. Yes. Assuming that there was an assembly, is it an unlawful assembly? Yes. How? There was an object. What is that object? It's an unlawful, to do an unlawful act. What is it? To commit this crime. So the object is to do a particular unlawful act, to commit a particular crime. That is the object. Very good. Therefore, the assembly becomes unlawful. They go there, but the resulted action, the resulted act was not, has got no connection at all with the common object. It is not in prosecution of the common object. That is the independent act of that accused. Therefore, I cannot be held responsible. This man cannot be held responsible. These people cannot be held responsible constructively, because the offense was committed by him. That was out of his own individual intention. It was out of his own individual intention, which has got nothing to do with the common object at all. We never even anticipated that this is likely to happen. We never anticipated. So here we have to put ourselves in the place of a common man, a prudent man. When these people had gone there to the field to remove the fence, whether they would have heard any idea that this murder is likely to happen. How? This is an unexpected act so far as the others are concerned. We kindly concentrate here. The resulted action, namely the murder committed by one of the members, was not even anticipated, expected. It was not even likely. We cannot know even. We didn't have any knowledge that this fellow had a hidden agenda in him to kill that person. This has got nothing to do with the common object. If you are able to establish this fact by eliciting sufficient evidence during cross-examination, then you will succeed so far as the other people are concerned, except the person who caused the death. The person who caused the death will be convicted under section 302. Then these people will be convicted and only for the assembly, for unlawful assembly, namely under section 143 IPC or 147 IPC or 148 IPC for writing. That's all the conviction for these people. But what is happening nowadays? All right, there was unlawful assembly. They are convicted for offense under section 147. Therefore, automatically we invoke section 149 and convict everyone. This is really unfortunate. Even after more than 150 years of our experience with this IPC, we have not understood what section 149 says. We feel, many of us feel, I am saying we feel means many of the honorable judges feel that when there is punishment under section 147, when there is proof of unlawful assembly, then conviction by invoking section 149 is automatic. That is what is practically happening. It is totally wrong. So, having come to the conclusion that there was an unlawful assembly, the court has to ascertain what was the object of that assembly. First, without making an assessment of the assembly, object of the assembly, the court cannot move forward further. But if you look at the judgments, there you will never find in many of the cases that there is an assessment of this object. They simply say that there are 5 people, okay. So, unlawful assembly. How? Unlawful assembly, all right. There is an object, all right. What is that object? You should make an assessment of that and give you a finding. Yes, the object of the assembly was this. That ascertainment should come first. After having come to the conclusion that this particular thing was the object of the assembly, then the court has to further examine whether the resulted offense has got anything to do with this object. If the resulted offense and the object are one and the same, in other words, if the object of the assembly itself is to kill, then there is no difficulty to invoke section 149. It is to be necessarily invoked. But on the contrary, if the object as ascertained by the court is one thing and the resulted offense is something different, the examination which should be meticulously done by the court further is whether that object and the resulted offense have got any interlink, interconnection, interplay. This is the nature test, this link. What further, what court has to do? Whether the act done by one person was in prosecution of the common object, which means whether that was done with a view to achieve the common object. In the illustration which I gave, the object was to cause damage to the property, but the offense committed was murder. Why the offense was committed by one person when all the others were silent? Why that was committed? If it is out of his own intention, the rest of the people cannot be committed on 149. The court has to see whether there is any connection between this. That's what I have been trying to repeatedly explain to you. I'm not sure whether I am very clear on this. The court has to, on further examination, the court has to give a finding. Yes, this was the object. So, in that object has been achieved. Therefore, everyone is liable. The court finds no, the object is one, but the offense committed is different. What is the connection? Without doing that offense, whether the object would have been achieved or not, whether this offense was committed in order to facilitate the commission, the achievement of or accomplishment of the object. This test is very, very important. If the court finds no, the object is one thing, the offense committed is something, and the offense was not committed in order to achieve this object. If this is de-linked, the object and the offense are de-linked by the court on a thorough scrutiny, then the court cannot convict all the accused under section 149 by invoking section 149. There will be proper punishment, I say. There will be proper punishment, namely the person who caused the death will be punished for murder and all the others will be punished only for unlawful assembly, not more than that. But friends, please kindly keep in your mind, in many cases, what is happening is when there is unlawful assembly, then invoking section 114 is automatic. It is not so. You have to make an argument. by referring to original text of 149 to say that you have to, step by step, you have to say, yes, there was assembly. Very good. The assembly is unlawful. Yes. Why? They had an object which is unlawful. What is that object? Please ascertain that. This is the object. What is the crime committed? Different. In between these two, there is no link. That is, the offense committed was not with a view to facilitate the achievement of the object. If this link is lost, then 149 cannot be invoked at all. At this point, we have to meticulously examine. Now, as I have already pointed out, for 149, 5 people must be present on the spot. All those members who are members of the assembly, who continue to be the members of the assembly, are liable for punishment. Okay? If a person is not there, or before the commission of the crime, if one person has left that place, so out of five people, before this crime of murder is committed, one person has already left. He is no more a member of the unlawful assembly, then he cannot be punished. He cannot be punished by invoking section 149. So to invoke section 149, at the time of the commission of the crime, he should continue to be a member of the assembly and he should also be present on the spot. These two are very, very essential. During cross-examination, it may be possible for us to elicit the truth by saying that this person, it is true that he went there to the field along with the others, he joined, he was there, but before the occurrence could take place, he returned, he withdrew. He was no more a member of unlawful assembly, therefore he cannot be punished. The crucial point is that the person should have been a member at the time of the commission of the crime. Then only he can be punished. If he are already left, then he cannot be punished. There are a lot of judgments on this aspect, and it is also necessary that it is not necessary that who caused the death is to be ascertained. There is a crowd of some 15 people. 15 people attack so many people, in that some 2-3 people, in which one person dies. Is it essential to prove as to who caused the death? No, it is not possible at all. Who attacked? Nobody knows. 15 people surrounded, they attacked. Who is responsible individually for the commission of murder? Nobody knows. Therefore, in a case involving section 149, it is not essential for the prosecution to prove as to who caused the death. It is enough to prove that one or more persons in the crowd was responsible for the commission of the crime. Then all the others will also be vicariously or consecutively held liable by invoking section 149. This is essentially the difference between 34 and 149. So 34 minimum requirement 2 persons, 149 minimum requirement 5 persons, 34 common intention. Common intention means there was a pre-meeting of mind to make intention as common. Common intention is required. Here, it is common object is required. That common object only makes the assembly unlawful. There, something should have been done in furtherance of the common intention, which resulted in an action, which resulted in an offense. Everyone is liable by invoking section 34. Participation in action is a must there. Participation in the action is a must. The intended act is murder. Towards that end, he should have done something. Participation in action is a must for 34. Now coming to 149, physical presence, continuing to be a member of the assembly at the time when the offense is committed is absolutely necessary. 1. 2. it is not necessary that he should have played any role in the commission of the crime. Not necessary, is enough. But the crime was committed in prosecution of the common object. If that is proved, mere presence in the assembly, continuing to be a member in the assembly is sufficient to convict all the accused by invoking section 149 of the IPC. Now, one more thing also you have to be careful is that an innocent presence of a person who never knew that there was a common object, who had gone there very accidentally, just he had gone there. He never joined the assembly. Though he was in the crowd, he cannot be considered to be a member of the assembly. In such an event also, he has to be acquitted. This is a broad understanding of section 34 and 149 IPC. Now let us move on to the other provision, namely section 109 IPC.
Sir, sorry to disturb.
Yes.
Sir, we have just got 4 more minutes. அதுக்கப்புறம் திருப்பி போய்டும், திருப்பி லாகின் பண்ணிப்பேன் சார்.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
Now 4 minutes we can use. Anybody want to ask anything in these two?
Sir, I have a query. Sujay here, sir.
Yes, please. Who is there?
Sujay Prasanna.
Yes, come on, come. Please come, Sujay. Please come.
Sir, there is a situation where the common intention and the common object may meet the same purpose. Let me give a scenario wherein they want to go to a person and prevent him from contesting an election. So 5 people go with a common intention of causing criminal intimidation. All the 5 people go to the person's house. The 5th person whom I am trying to defend is mere physical presence is sufficient to intimidate, because a bulk number of people standing there will create an intimidation in the mind of the victim. So now it falls under both 34 and 149, as you have eloquently explained. It fulfills both the requirements. So how will prosecution proceed under 34?
Yes, it depends upon the offense ultimately committed. It all depends upon the offense ultimately committed, coupled with the initial act, whether it was only an intention or object. This is the matter which makes the difference, all the difference between these two. If you hold that intention, particular offense, this particular offense, you can punish them under section 34 by invoking section 34, because they had the intention to go and intimidate him. They went there. The object is one thing. I have object. My object is to go and intimidate him. When we go there, we were intimidating him. At that time, unexpectedly, some other person comes and intervenes. One person attacks him. He dies. There, 149 can be invoked, because this is the likely event. When you are trying to achieve your object, you should expect that neighbor will come and he will prevent. So in order to achieve your object, but for preventing him, this occurrence cannot happen, the object cannot be achieved. So only for the purpose of achieving the object, if this is done, then 149. So the difference is between the intention and the object. That is what you have to find from the evidences available. So intention can be gathered from the motive. Let us say all the 5 people are enemies. They go together. Then they are carrying a common intention, because they had already formed a common intention to achieve that, to eliminate that person they are going. So the motive is one of the factors which gives you some input to know whether it is object or assembly. If all the 5 people have got enmity, and out of that enmity they want to eliminate that person, but they join together with the common intention. Their individual intention becomes common. They go there with the common intention. Motive is the factor. Motive is one of the inputs. Unlawful, it is only I engage some other people, 4 or 5 people, all 5 may go together. Motive. They got this object to do this only. They had no intention to commit the main. It was not intention. It was not the object at all. In such an event, invoke section 149 because the object is there in order to achieve this object. This main offense is committed. So it all see in each case you cannot have a straitjacket formula. Difference in each case you another intention or object.
Sir, doubt இருக்கு sir.
Yes, please. Be brief because we got hardly 15 minutes. I got to cover one more topic. Please.
ஓகே சார். சார் பிரசிடென்ட் வந்துட்டு தமிழ்நாடு வராரு சார். ஒரு 10 people சேர்ந்துட்டு வரக்கூடாதுன்னு சொல்லிட்டு பிளாக் ஃபிளாக் காமிக்கிறாங்க சார். அதுல வந்துட்டு 4 பேருக்கு வந்துட்டு அந்த இன்டென்ஷன் இல்ல, எதுக்காக அந்த மீட்டிங் ஏதோ மீட்டிங்னு சொல்லிட்டு அட்டன் பண்ண போறாங்க சார். கடைசியில் தான் தெரியுது அவங்க ஜனாதிபதிக்கு எதிராக பிளாக் ஃபிளாக் காமிக்கிறதுக்காக கூடியிருக்காங்கன்னு தெரியுது சார். போலீஸ் வந்துட்டு என்ன பண்றாங்கன்னா 149லயும் மெம்பர் ஆஃப் அன்லாஃபுல் அசம்பிளின்னு சொல்லிட்டு 143லயும் சொல்லிட்டு இது பண்றாங்க.
வேகமா பேசுங்க, சொல்லுங்க.
எஃப்ஐஆர் போடுறாங்க சார். ஆனா 142ல என்ன சொல்லுதுன்னா aware of the facts member of the assembly இருக்கு.
தம்பி எக்ஸ்பிளைன் எல்லாம் பண்ண வேண்டாம், உங்க டவுட்ட கேளுங்க. நீங்க முக்கியம், நிறைய பேர் வெயிட் பண்றாங்க.
அப்ப எல்லாருமே கன்விக்ட் ஆவாங்களா இல்ல எப்படின்னு கேக்குறேன் சார்.
இப்போ இதெல்லாம்
10 மெம்பர்ஸ் இருக்காங்க, 4 மெம்பர்ஸ்க்கு வந்து இன்டென்ஷன் இல்ல.
தம்பி இது வந்து என்ன விஷயம்னு கேட்டீங்கன்னா, எவிடன்ஸ் எப்படி வரப்போகுதுங்கிற போட்டு எப்படி கன்விக்ட் ஆவாங்களா ஆக மாட்டாங்களா ஜோசியமா சொல்ல முடியும். எவிடன்ஸ் என்ன வரப்போகுங்கிறது இருக்கு. இவங்க என்ன சொல்லணும், இந்த மாதிரி இருக்கிற விஷயமே எங்களுக்கு தெரியாது, நாங்க இன்னசென்ட்டா போய் நின்னோங்கிற இவங்க எஸ்டாப்ளிஷ் பண்ணணும். அப்படி இல்லைன்னு வைங்க, நீங்க போனதுக்கு அப்புறம் உங்களுக்கு தெரிஞ்சது இல்லை அவங்க கொடி காட்டுறது கருப்பு கொடி வச்சிருந்தாங்கன்னு, அப்புறம் அதுல சேர்ந்துட்டா then you also become a member of the assembly. Though initially your intention was not to become a member of the unlawful assembly, when you after having known that the assembly becomes unlawful, if you continue, then you are also liable. அதாவது போகையில ஒண்ணுமே தெரியல, சும்மா அழைச்சிட்டு போறாங்க உங்களை வாங்கன்னு, லாஃபுல் அசம்பிளி நினைச்சிட்டு போறீங்க. அட் ஒன் பாயிண்ட் ஆயிட்டோம் இட் பிகம்ஸ் அன்லாஃபுல். அப்போ அன்லாஃபுல் அசம்பிளி உங்களுக்கு தெரியுது. தெரிஞ்சதுக்கு அப்புறம் இஃப் யூ கண்டினியூ தென் யூ வில் பி a member of the unlawful assembly, you can be punished. Okay, very good. Anybody else, sir?
Thank you, sir.
Sir, we can move to the next, sir.
Yes, I'll go move on to the next. Yes. Very good. See, the next topic is abatement. Please, when I say about abatement, you will now really have some more confusion. You please come to section 107 now. All the 3 are, all the 4 are interlinked. 104, please come. 107, please come to 107. So, Shivasundar, may I take another 30 minutes, sir?
Sir, by all means, sir.
Yes, please. Because I cannot finish it. Please come to 107 quickly.
இதெல்லாம் உங்களுக்கு தான் சார். டேக் யுவர் டைம் சார்.
Okay, please come to 107. All of you, please. Have got that now? If I am going to ask only questions for participants to answer now. See, 107 இப்போ 2 செக்ஷன் உங்களுக்கு நான் சொல்லிட்டேன். 34 and 149 என்னங்கறது சொல்லிட்டேன். காமன் இன்டென்ஷன், காமன் ஆப்ஜெக்ட் எல்லாம் சொல்லிட்டேன். இப்போ இதை படிச்சு பாருங்க. இப்போ பாருங்க 109 பாருங்க முதல்ல, அப்புறம் 107 போகும். Whoever abates any offense shall, if the act abated is committed in consequence of the abatement, and no express provision is made by this code for the punishment of that provision, then every be punished with punishment provided for that offense. Abatement. What is abatement? Please come to section 107 now. A person abates the doing of a thing who first instigates any person to do that thing, or engages with one or more persons in any conspiracy. 3, intentionally aids by any act or illegal omission the doing of that thing. This is abatement. What is abatement? Instigating somebody to do an illegal act. Let us say it is an offense. instigating somebody to commit an offense. Secondly, or aiding a person to commit a crime. Second. Third, entering into a conspiracy with that person to commit a crime. If these things, if any one of these things is there, then if the offense so abated is committed, then this person will also be liable for punishment. Now, I will give one small illustration. There are two people, A and B. A has got enmity with C. A wants to eliminate C. Now, what A does, A engages B. I'll give you money, you go and kill him. So now B goes and kills C. A did not kill him at all. Who kills? B alone kills. Now, undoubtedly, B can be punished for murder because he has killed. He can be punished for murder or culpable, whatever it is. He can be punished. What is the punishment for A1? For A1, we can invoke section 109 because he has instigated him to go and commit the crime. Therefore, he is also liable for murder by invoking section 109. This is what 109 says. Either instigation or aiding. When he commits the crime, he aids him. There also 109 can be invoked. Now you see the difference between the similarity between this thing 34 and this. 34, what I said, 2 persons or more. All right, 2 persons. What do? They form an opinion. What for? They form an intention, which is common. What for? To kill one person. They go together. One person kills, the other person aids him. 2 persons. Please kindly note this. Please kindly note this. It will be very, very difficult to understand. 2 persons decide to kill one X. Both of them go there. One person aids the other person kills him. One person aids him means he is holding the hand, etc. Like that. He goes and aids him. The other man kills. Now, for the person who killed, it is 302, no doubt. For the person who aided, what is the punishment now? Under what provision? Please, one of you, switch on and answer this.
34 read with 302.
Why 109?
Why 109 is not applicable is because physical presence is the difference between 109 and 34. The presence at the scene of crime. The presence at the scene of crime is the difference between 109 and 34. If he is in the scene of crime and aids, then 34 is applicable.
Okay. So aiding, see, I am talking about aiding. In absentia, aiding is one thing. Aiding by being present is also possible in law. 2 people go, one person aids, the other person kills. 109 will come or not?
When there is a special provision dealing with it, so it becomes a general provision, and therefore 34
which is general, which is special. Both are
34. 34 speaks aiding and the presence of the scene of crime. 109 only speaks about aiding. So this is vast place is being given.
No. 34 for 34, both must be present. Okay, for 34. 109 does not say that they need not be present. They need not be present. They may or may not be present. Okay. In the illustration which I have given, 2 people go. One person causes the death. The other one aids him. Aiding. 109 or not? Now, how to invoke section 109 or 34? Somewhere there is some problem in understanding these two. Is it not? One may say that 34 can be invoked in this case. The other may say, no, 109 can be invoked. Both prima facie appear to be the same. Because in both the cases, one man causes the death, the other man aids. The other man aids him. He helps him. Therefore, 109 can also be invoked in such an event. Why 34? Why 34? The difference is in the matter of intention. In the matter of intention. If both had the same intention to kill, if both had the same intention to kill, then the intention becomes common. Then they are to be punished under section 34 IPC. But one person has got the intention to kill, the other person never intended to kill him at all. He had no intention at all. But he only helps him. Not with the intention of killing. He just helps him. He just aids him. In such an event, we can invoke section 109. At any rate, law aims that the man who participates in the crime should not escape. So far as punishment is concerned, same punishment. By invoking section 34, it is going to be either life or death. By invoking section 109 also, it is going to be either life or death. So, for 34, please keep in your mind, both the accused must be physically present. For 109, it is not necessary at all. It is not necessary at all. One person may induce the other one. One person may help the other person and ask him to go and commit murder. He will go and commit the crime of murder. In such an event also, the person who instigated, the person who aided him is liable for life sentence by invoking section 109. So as it was pointed out by Mr. Sujay, superficially we can keep it like this. If both are present on the spot, invoke section 34. One person commits a crime, the other one helps him or aids him. Invoke section 34. If out of the two, one person alone goes there and he alone commits the crime, then to punish the other man who did not go there, invoke section 109. At any rate, people do not escape. This is 109. Now, 109, there is one clause in 109 we say, abetment is nothing but aiding. I have given you example. By means of instigation, I have given example. I instigate so-and-so to go and commit a murder. I am also liable for life sentence or death penalty. This is 109. Very good. These two clauses I will explain to you. There is yet another clause we say, if they engage in conspiracy, if they engage in conspiracy, that by itself is an abetment. That by itself is an abetment. Now, in the same illustration, these two people agree, decide to go and commit the murder. Will it not amount to conspiracy then? If this is conspiracy, then they have to be punished either by invoking section 120B or section 109. How section 34 will come now? Now, similarly, you take the case of 149. 5 people decide to kill a person. They agree. Is there conspiracy or not now? There is conspiracy because conspiracy is nothing but, as defined in section 120B, conspiracy is nothing but an agreement to commit a crime, to commit an unlawful act, which is a crime. So for under 120B, if there is an agreement between parties, between the accused to commit a crime, an offense of conspiracy is committed. If the offense upon from conspiracy, the offense conspired is committed, then the persons who commit that crime are independently liable for that. You just see the difference. Let us say that there are 5 people. Out of the 5 people, they conspire first to kill one X. Now, 3 people do not go there. 2 people go and commit murder. 2 people go and commit murder. Please kindly follow this. out of 5, they decided to kill. There was an agreement among all the 5. 3 people remain here itself. 2 people go and commit the murder. Now, so far as the conspiracy is concerned, it is an independent offense committed by all the 5 accused. All the 5 accused. Therefore, all the 5 are to be punished for the offense of conspiracy to commit murder. That is life sentence for this, for all the 5. Then so far as the 2 people are concerned, apart from committing one offense of conspiracy, they do commit another offense, namely murder. So for that offense, those 2 people alone are liable to be punished. See, so out of the 5, 3 people will be sentenced with single life sentence because they have committed only one offense of conspiracy. The other 2 are concerned, they have committed the offense of conspiracy and also they have committed the offense of murder. Therefore, 2 life sentence for them. This may not confuse you now. 5 people, agreement. Section 120B says there has to be an agreement. Conspiracy means there has to be an agreement to do a crime, to commit a crime. 5 people conspire, 2 people commit. I have given the illustration. Now my question is, can they not be punished by invoking section 109? Can they not be punished by invoking section 109? Because 3 people instigate 2 people to go and commit murder, 2 people commit murder. Is there conspiracy? Is it conspiracy or mere abetment?
Sir, it can fall under the second clause of 107.
Okay.
That is an act done in furtherance of a conspiracy. So it is not a conspiracy, therefore it is an abetment. It is a varying degree. So it is a higher degree abetment is. Therefore they can be prosecuted under abetment.
So very good. So very good. So suppose all the 5 people go. All the 5 people go and commit the murder. How will you deal with that now? 5 people. Please answer this question alone, then I will proceed further. 5 people conspire here to go and commit murder. All the 5 go together. All the 5 commit the murder. How will you charge and how will you?
Then it should be 120B for all, 302 for all.
So, therefore, 2 life sentences.
Yes,
Correct?
sir, concurrently. Yes, sir.
2 life sentences. In the earlier case also I said, here, see, you put it in, I put the same occurrence in a different language. I put the same occurrence in a different language. 5 people decide to kill a person and they hatch a common object. Now the assembly becomes unlawful. They go and commit murder. Unlawful assembly commits murder. Now in this, what is the charge? What is the punishment? 5 people, same occurrence, same event. I am putting it 2 different languages. Second one I say is 5 people sit together, decide to kill a person. They form an assembly. That assembly becomes unlawful. Object is to kill. They go and kill. How will you punish them now?
Can be prosecuted under 149.
Same occurrence. When I put in one language, you said they have to be punished for conspiracy and also for murder. 2 life sentence. If the first language which I employed is used, 2 life sentence. For conspiracy, by itself is a single individual offense, 1 life sentence. Commission of the offense, all the 5 go and commit the crime. For that there is life. 2 life sentences. Same occurrence. Same event. I couch the same in a different language. I describe or narrate it in a different language. Second one, 5 people. There are also 5 people. 5 people sit together. They decide to kill some X, which amounts to agreement. Conspiracy is over. If they go there they commit the murder. Murder happens. There are 2 life sentences. 2 offenders committed 2 life sentences. If you call it as an unlawful assembly and you name it as object, common object, an unlawful object, then there is only 1 life sentence. When you put it in a different language to say that it is nothing but an agreement, then it becomes 2 offenses. What is the fun? What is the fun in this? Anybody, sir? Anybody can intervene, sir, now?
Same situation, if there is a higher punishment prescribed, that should be the charging provision.
For both it is a life sentence. For
Yes.
both it is a life sentence. See.
No, but for 149 only one sentence. If it is for 120B and 302.
No, that is not the decisive factor. Factor is how many offences are committed. If my act amounts to a larger offence, for that I can be punished. Here, 2 different offences. Sir, 1 offence happens here.
Conspiracy, unlawful assembly, and murder.
Conspiracy,
Unlawful assembly and murder.
unlawful assembly, and murder. Then murder is on account of conspiracy or not?
Yes, it is on account of conspiracy.
Very good. So 2 life
And when the
sentences.
event happened, there is also an unlawful assembly with a
2
common
life
object.
sentences. Yes, sir. 2 life sentences then. 2 life sentences then, sir.
Yes,
Sir,
sir.
for conspiracy, 1 life sentence.
Yes.
Then they go as a crowd, as an unlawful assembly, they commit the crime there. So for that, everyone is liable by invoking section 149, 1 life sentence.
Yes.
So for conspiracy, 1 life sentence. For that, another 1 life sentence. Totally 2 life sentences.
life.
Correct, sir? Correct, sir?
Yes.
Have we experienced any case where the High Court has imposed 2 life sentences so far? No?
No.
No, sir. In all cases where 149 is invoked, there is only 1 life sentence imposed. There is only 1 life. Sorry, anybody else who is practicing on the criminal side, sir, here, you can come forward to say, have you seen any case where there is an unlawful assembly, they go together, 2 life sentences given? Have you seen any case? Sir, to my experience, sir, no. No charge, no punishment. You know why? They do not understand that by sitting together, by agreeing to commit a crime, they have already committed 1 crime. They forget this. This offense of conspiracy, they completely forget. Where do they start? They were proceeding together. On the spot, they were in an unlawful assembly. Therefore, we convict them for offense of murder by invoking section 149. 1 offense which was already committed is completely left. It is ignored. Why this is happening? We have not understood the law properly. Evidence is collected by the police. So in fact, evidence is collected, sir. They say that these people gathered at the house of A1 by 8 o'clock. They had a meeting there. They all took out weapons from that house. By 9 o'clock, they went together to the house of the deceased. So all 5, 6, all the people who gathered here went there and they committed the murder. Policeman collects the evidence. Policeman puts up evidence sufficiently. But we do not frame charges properly. And we say, yes. How do we interpret this, sir? In courts, all the people formed an unlawful assembly here. From there they started. They went there. The assembly caused the death. Therefore, 1 life sentence. You see, because of our ill equipment, how the accused escapes without getting 1 more punishment for conspiracy. Now, this you can see. Suppose 10 people gather at the house of A1. 10 people gather at the house of A1. So all decide to kill the deceased. Now, they go together. All the 10 people go together. When they were halfway through, 5 people withdrew. They do not go further. They have withdrawn from the assembly. They do not want to go and do it further. But the rest of the 5 people go and commit the murder. These people did not go there at all. Whether these people will escape now or not. These people who withdrew from the assembly will escape because they were not parties at the place of occurrence. They were not present. Therefore, 149 cannot be invoked. They have already withdrawn from the assembly. They will escape. That means there is no punishment at all for them. Therefore, the proper course would be to pray for their gathering, hatching an idea, taking a decision, coming to an agreement to kill the person. That is a starting point. In that, 10 people are there. One offense is complete. All the 10 should be punished for that. Then, when they were proceeding, 5 people, there was a change of mind. They do not join. They withdraw. Then 5 people alone go and commit murder. They are actual participants in that murder. They are to be punished for that. Among the 5, some people would have killed, but invoking section 149, all should be given life sentence. So those people who started from here and went there and committed murder, 2 life sentences. For the others, only 5 sentences. For the other 5, only 1 life sentence. But it never happens. It never happens. We are very safe. We also never worry about this. When the matter comes up before the High Court, the High Court could not do anything because there was no charge for conspiracy. There was no opportunity afforded to the accused. There was no evidence collected. Therefore, we do not do anything. Ultimately, the person who are to suffer double life sentence suffer only 1 life sentence because of the failure of us to understand. So therefore, the difference is similarly. I will give yet another complicated issue also.
Sir, was this the theory behind the Gurucharan case, sir, that you had the occasion to argue? So was this the theory that was applied in Gurucharan case that you have argued before the Supreme Court?
Which one, sir?
Gurucharan case. Gurucharan. Guru allies Gurucharan versus state, where the injuries does not match the weapon carried by the accused. No charge was framed for 34.
Yes.
You argued the matter, sir.
I argued the case. In that case, his presence was doubted, therefore he was acquitted. So when his presence is not there, you cannot invoke section 34. For conspiracy, there was no charge. In fact, when 2 people, you please understand this, when 2 people gather here, they conspire, they go together, they commit murder. So conspiracy has already been committed. For that, there has to be 1 life sentence. Then actual murder happens. For that, invoking section 34, there has to be another life sentence. This is a proper course. But what is happening? We couch it in a different language. How these 2 people gathered at the house, shared the common intention, and formed a shared intention, and they formed a common intention. They went there. In furtherance of the common intention, they committed the murder. Therefore, 34 is invoked. 302, single life sentence. We forget one important aspect. These 2 people, before going there, hatched a conspiracy here. It is not mere sharing of intention. It is reaching of an agreement. Correct? There lies a difference. What happened at the house of the accused is nothing short of reaching of an agreement. Then conspiracy offense is over. That is committed already. Then when they go to the spot, they carry the common intention. There they commit the crime. 34 can be invoked. For that, another life sentence. Similarly, when you invoke section 149, we never bother about 120B at all. 120B is invoked only in circumstantial evidence cases. When there are eyewitnesses, we never bother to invoke section 120B at all. In almost all 100% of cases, I say that when there are eyewitnesses, then they are very safe. No 120B. Who should we take the trouble of framing a charge under 120B and give you a finding on that. This is the way courts are now doing. So in a very, very blind manner, without understanding the nuances, what is happening? Two people, eyewitnesses are there. All right. 302 under section 34. Finished. 5 people, 6 people, 7 people. Very good. There are eyewitnesses. They were present on the spot. Right. Invoke 149. Matter over. We never bother to see what is the origin. Origin is to be seen. Origin of the occurrence was at the house or at some other place where they gathered. At the place where they gathered, if they had reached an agreement to commit the crime, then one offense is committed. For that, there has to be a charge. In many cases, suppose I can also give another illustration. Where they gathered, no evidence. Where they joined, no evidence. Suddenly at the place of occurrence, when the deceased is standing, 5 people suddenly come and they cut him and kill him. In that case, you can say that there is no materials for conspiracy there, therefore you can punish them by imposing 1 life sentence. Because there is no evidence for agreement. It can also be argued conspiracy is hatched in secrecy, but from out of the conduct of the accused, it is to be inferred. The fact that they came together, the fact that all were armed with weapons, can go to indicate that they had already agreed to commit the crime. Therefore, apart from this unlawful assembly, they had already committed an offense of conspiracy for which they should be punished. We never do that. We have not seen this at all. This is because of the confusion we still have in reconciling section 34, section 149, section 109, and section 120B. These 4 sections are interlinked. Give me one case, I will, by using one set of language, I will bring it under 109. Same occurrence, same facts, I will bring it by using a different language under 34. I will bring it under 149. I will bring it under 120B also. It all depends upon the word that you use, the language that you are going to use. If we call it as common intention, simply 34. If we call it as common object, simply 149. If we call it only as an abetment, that is aiding or instigating, 109. If we call it as something more, namely unlawful assembly, common object and agreement, conspiracy. So, common intention, common object, agreement, that is conspiracy, aiding or instigating, 109. So, it is only the language, prima facie, makes all the difference. Occurrence is one and the same. By using our intelligence, by couching the same in a different language, we can bring it under either one of these sections. But that is not the intention of the lawmaker. Lawmaker wanted us to understand these 4 provisions and to bring the offense under the appropriate provision. Under the appropriate provision. That is the intention of the lawmaker. Therefore, we should know the first principle behind all these 4 sections. Then only we can be in a position to effectively defend an accused or prosecute an accused. This is very, very essential. Nowadays, in most of the cases, they implicate any number of people by invoking section 149. The danger of innocent people getting convicted is very, 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 very common, I can say. You all know that it is not every criminal who is convicted nowadays. Similarly, it is not every innocent who is acquitted nowadays. The innocents are convicted, real culprits are acquitted. It happens because of our either misunderstanding of law or because of our misapplication of these legal proceedings without knowing the first principle behind these four provisions. That's the reason why I have not taken you through any judgment. As I told you, the proper course which I have been following is first, know the first principle. Read the section, statutory provision, repeatedly, segmentize that, segregate that, word by word, line by line, read it once, twice, thrice, 4 times. Then you will know as to what is the first principle. Not only that provision, you should also read all the related provisions. Now, the interconnected provisions. Now I have told you, these 4 provisions are interlinked or interconnected. Read all these provisions. First, you will understand as to what the first principle is. If you once understand the first principle, then you can apply it and there will be no miscarriage of justice. Otherwise, I say the danger of miscarriage is very, very common nowadays. Very, very common. And I am totally dissatisfied with the functioning of the system. This I say with heavy heart, having been a judge for more than 10 years and with so much of experience in the criminal side for 40 years, I say that many cases are either lost unduly or succeeded unduly because of the misunderstanding of the first principles. For everything what we do, we look, we just go to our library and take one or two judgments similar to that. We place it before this is the judgment. All right, 1970 this is said, 2000 said this is said. In criminal law, unless a principle is stated or unless a law is declared, this won't be a binding precedent. The judgment that you cite is not binding on the judge. It may only help him, it may only guide him to come to a correct conclusion in this case. So in these similar circumstances, earlier judges were taken this view. Please kindly take the same view. That is what you are saying. But you cannot ask the judge, you are bound by the judgment because the judgment is on facts. No law has been declared. No principle has been evolved. So some judgments are shown. Number B, as judges, what we do, we just see that judgment, read that, okay, similar are the facts, all right, we give the judgment. Without making proper assessment of the evidence, without knowing the nuances of these substantive provisions in the IPC, we are now dealing with the cases. If a doctor is ill-equipped, we prosecute him. But we lawyers,
Yes.
we never own up our deficiencies. I would only request you, please kindly read the statutory provision. Criminal law practice is very, very difficult.